This morning in North Carolina, wheels are spinning. Determination is winning. A passion is now a thriving business, and it shows no signs of slowing down. How? The power of a conversation, like the one Clint Spiegel had with First Horizon Bank about starting a bike wheel manufacturing facility in Asheville. Now it's not just talk, it's rubber meets road. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Clint. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
Texas is known for a lot of things. Vodka was not one of them. It is now, and it's all thanks to Tito's Handmade Vodka. Today, we talk to Theo Hall. We talk about Big Boy, Killer Mike, parties, dogs, and good old vodka. All that and more today on the Marketing Madmen.
They say marketing is a madman's game. So now we turn it over to the Marketing Madman with Nick Constantino and Trip Job.
Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino with you. And, season 2 keeps rolling along, and now we've got, I think we've got a fun new series coming up.
That we do.
And, we did a little bit in season 1 on the beer and spirits industry, but we haven't kicked that off yet this year. So it is, it's that time. It's spring. Everything's in the air, and it's drinking time. So, Nick, I know you got a friend of yours, and why don't you introduce Theo, and we'll get into it.
Yeah. So one of the topics now covers marketing. It covers just success stories, American success stories. There's a lot to cover here. But the spirits industry has changed a lot, just like most things. COVID changed a lot of it, a lot of supply issues, a lot of those things. But at its core, in this country in the past decade, I could not imagine a more successful brand, marketing product. It pretty much created a market itself than Tito's Handmade Vodka. And we have Theo Hall here from Tito's to talk through kind of the past, the present, and the future of the brand and kind of what we see for some trends. So Theo, happy to have you.
Yeah. Hey guys, thanks for having me on today.
So what was it, man? I mean, again, if you talk about it, in my history, what I remember, it was Patron and Tito's were the two brands that just came out of absolutely nowhere. Now, I was living in Vegas when Patron came about. That probably changed it, and it was actually made in Vegas, and it was just always at nightclub. Insane. But talk about Tito's, how it has become this brand that everyone's trying to duplicate, how many Texas vodkas there are now. What was the perfect storm that made that happen?
Oh, yeah. So you just mentioned Texas vodkas. That was a fun thing that when Tito got his start, everybody thought he was crazy. Vodkas weren't made in Texas.
Yeah. Right.
And there he was in Austin, where he was born and raised. And he just was like, oh, I see all these other small batch distilleries popping up. Little did he know they weren't really small distilleries up there in Tennessee. They were really just other brands going on. But he's like, I can do this. He was a geophysicist by trade and knew the science behind it and decided to go to the library, find out how to make his own stills, because he had to look at pictures back in the day. He couldn't just go on the internet and see how to do it. But he made his own stills, built a distillery out towards the airport.
What year was this about?
Oh, this was 25 years ago.
25 years ago.
Last year, we celebrated our 25th anniversary.
Great.
Wow.
Cheers to 25 years to Tito. But yeah, the first guy to do a vodka in Texas. And from there, people from Texas, they love everything Texas.
Right.
Word got out. And it just started to spread.
It also followed the timeline of Austin just growing from a nothing town to one of the most booming places in the country. I mean, I've been numerous times, and every time I go, I'm like, man, this is a weird anomaly in the state of Texas that this is here. It is just such, Austin has its own culture. I mean, the Keep Austin Weird thing. I think the first time I was there, I saw 6 people dancing naked in a fountain. And someone tried to stop them. And they're like, Keep Austin Weird. I'm like, oh my God, I could get behind this.
I know. I'm going to be there just in a week or two. So, but it's, and I think it sounds like it's a very authentic story, but then I think trying to get across that it's authentic vodka when you're in from Texas and no one's used to that had to be an interesting, marketing dilemma.
Oh, yeah. I mean, shoot, when I started, been with the brand a little over 8 years ago, I had people ask me, oh, Tito's, it must be a tequila, right? Just from the name. No, absolutely not.
Yeah, that's crazy. It makes sense too, because people until they know it as a household name, spirits are an odd industry, right? You ask for there's very few things you ask for, Jack and Coke, things like that.
Right,
and I know because Tito's is becoming one of those, you ask for Tito's and something. And that once you cross to that level, and I remember it's actually a very funny story. We were in Savannah, I was with my mother in Savannah, one of those dive bars along the river there. And we're in a bar, and it's just a complete crap hole. And my mom goes, I think I want a pomegranate martini. I go, Mom, they are not making you a freaking pomegranate martini here. I go, shut up and have a Tito's and cranberry like a normal person. So she comes over, she gets a Tito's and cranberry. To this day, she has not drank anything but Tito's and cranberry from that one time. So that is an example of every bar has it. And that's the first step. You're on the menus, all that stuff. But what I find fascinating is that if you look at the spirits industry, whiskey has come so big. The barriers to entry to make whiskey are ungodly high because of the aging, the bottling, the stills. Yeah. At its core, vodka is easy to make. Vodka is a neutral spirit which is distilled very easily. Now, don't get me wrong, the filtering, there's processes, there's proprietary things, but how was nobody else making vodka in America to this capacity until that point?
Right. I don't know. I guess people just hadn't thought about it. You know, Tito, he really was the first person to have a micro distillery. And for him, it was a little niche market, you know. The Russian vodka that was over here was dominating the market.
Right.
And he found a little niche and he said, you know, if I can make a vodka that a woman can drink straight without having to mix or chase, then I think I could be onto something, right? So he bought a bunch of brands that were on the market, tried them all versus his, and when he finally had the right mix with corn,
sure,
right?
And that's where that biophysicist that had to help there.
Geophysicist, absolutely.
Yeah. That had to help.
Well,
there.
and that's the idea of finding that niche, and in this case, maybe even a super niche.
Yeah.
In that initially targeting the female market.
Correct.
And how do we serve them with something different?
Yeah.
And no one was doing it.
He had to have a good palate, too, because I don't care what anyone
that's
says. True. Most people are not tasting the difference between 10 vodkas. I
Right.
mean, it is built to be a neutral spirit on purpose. So if he can actually distinguish his, which I'm sure he had a bunch of it, he had a good palate also. And I think that's that palatability is what he's looking for. It's not maybe marketing to him, but if they can drink it, too, I'm opening up a whole nother segment of the market right there.
Correct.
Yeah, that's it. Again, I'm sure there's so much more. So let's look at the growth trajectory. What would you say was about the time where the trajectory really started taking off? 10 years in? What was the frame where it started? And again, I'm trying to remember in my own head, but for some reason, because I was drinking Tito's, it's all blurry. Give us the timeline of when you think this really started, kind of that upward exponential trajectory.
I think about 5 or 6 years ago is when it really took off. We had a lot of success, especially getting on a few different airlines, which helped with trial throughout the United States. And then by that point, we had asked, once you try Tito's, tell 10 of your closest friends about it. And you talked about exponentially.
Yeah.
Oh, it took off about 5 or 6 years ago, definitely.
Yeah, and everyone started asking for it, which means everyone had to carry it, which means you're in rapid expansion.
Correct.
Every liquor store has to have it, then every bar has to have it, then the suppliers have to do it. And who are you guys distributed by in Atlanta here?
Here in the state of Georgia, it's Savannah Distributing Company.
So they are their infrastructure's got to build exponentially just to keep up with the demand and the pace of it. So they're growing. And that's one of the things I actually love about the spirit industry. And most people don't know, but the 3-tier system allows the suppliers, the wholesalers, and the C-store people to all make money. And there's been more wealth created by the distributors than I've ever seen. I know some of the guys here, the guys that own Georgia Crown in general, and I mean family transitional generational wealth is created from distributing this stuff. So there's been a ton of wealth generated in this company because of this industry.
Oh yeah, wealth generated and a lot of jobs created. There are a lot of sales. Somebody's got to sell it. So they've been able to grow their sales team a lot, which is wonderful.
What's your percentage of on-premise versus off-premise?
Oh, on-premise versus off-premise. I think we're about 30% on-premise to 70% off-premise.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and on-premise versus off-premise just means in a bar, liquor store, restaurant, or in a restaurant and bar, or at a liquor store where you buy it for consumption in your house. Probably changed a little bit during COVID. I have to imagine that those numbers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everything shut down.
Yeah.
That was a scary time for us.
A lot more home mixologists, I would say.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk about mixed drinks. Let's have some fun with that. So what are some of the most unique ones you've seen? I'm sure you guys do bartending competitions. What are some of the ones, what are most popular? Let's talk about some of those.
Oh, well, the bartenders will tell you that a Tito's and vodka is the drink that gets called for the most.
That's amazing.
Really? Which is silly. Oh, yeah. People are trying to say Tito's soda. It's late in the evening, and Tito's and vodka. Oh. No, basically a Tito's soda with lime is delicious.
Yeah. That's my go-to.
That's my go-to. Tito's and cranberry also, if you're just going to talk, basic drinks. But right now, the espresso martini is on fire.
Okay.
Everywhere that you look. I cover national accounts for Tito's Handmade Vodka, and a majority of my national accounts are putting it on the menu, and it's their top-selling drink at the moment.
Wow. And they got a little kick of caffeine too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's in espresso?
An espresso martini?
Yeah.
Tito's, espresso. Depends if you want cream, a little bit of Kahlua sometimes. Cafe Borghetti is another, coffee liqueur that's going into these. But it's popping up on every menu in the United States.
You didn't mention many things to water this down. So you're talking real martini.
It's got a little bit of a kick.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about some of the more, you talk about your mules and stuff like that. Are those things still trendy? Are people going crazy and making more? I mean, because, look, I think we're at the
summer
end.
will be here before we know it. So it's
I just
you got to talk fruity drinks in the summer.
I think you're near the end of the real mixology era. I mean, it was a long era, man. You're talking about these mixologists for 10, 15 years now have reigned, charging $38 for a drink because they're using a jigger and hand lighting the basil on fire and slapping it and smoking a drink into it. Do you see that continuing? And have there been drinks that have gotten popularity from that kind of craft, bartender movement?
Actually, I do see it continuing, and here's why. Everybody was stuck at home for a year, right? They weren't going out.
How bad they were at it.
They realized how bad they were. That's why you see margaritas #1 in the United States and basic cocktails like a Tito soda, because people learned how to make those at home. But now that they're getting back out, you're going to look for more shareable cocktails in groups, right?
Okay.
So look for that on menus. But flair bartending has always been a thing.
That's true.
And it's a lot of fun when you go out and you're out with friends and you see a bartender throwing bottles up in the air making those cool cocktails.
Yeah. Especially that first drink, the night.
Absolutely.
What do you have? And we did it. We were up at in Roswell on Kent Street a couple weeks ago, and the four of us, and everyone got something different, and the drinks started, just passing around a little bit. See what they were. So.
I guess I'm a purist at heart, and that's I'm with you, man. Tito, you got to do it. Tito's and soda water, probably double Tito's, one splash of soda water, lemon lime is the good stuff. Whiskey on the rocks, I'm not for that. But what about trends? Do you see vodka growing up, down? Where do you see that going?
Yes, right now I see vodka still trending up in the United States. The brown spirits movement was big for a long time. Tequila is trending in the United States as well right now. Yeah. So
what about gin? I've heard about freaking gin for the past 10 years. Gin was going to make a move.
One person it was going to make a move. Making it.
Is it become anything of a threat, or are they still just making gin for no reason?
There's a group of people that really like gin, and they're your gin drinkers, and I think
yeah, and most of them are old-timey Brits.
They're Canadian with their
they're old-timey Brits with six teeth that are brown. But anyway,
it's we'll get into that a little bit when we come back from the break. But we kind of want to get into as well some of the things that how you think about your marketing, how you go after some of these target markets. So there's just some neat stories I think that Tito's has done. So you are listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino here with Theo Hall of Tito's Handmade Vodka. We were talking about a lot of the trends going on, and you've just celebrated 25 years at Tito's.
Yep, thank you.
Let's talk about some of the ways that you've gotten that message out, and some of the target markets. I mean, I think it's some unique stories that it's more than just the female market. I think one of the ones that one of the first times I think I heard was kind of the the vodka for dog people. So tell us, how did that come about first off, and then maybe get into a little more of the program.
Oh yeah. First of all, the Vodka for Dog People program isn't something that we just decided on to sell vodka, right? Helping dogs has been in our DNA since day one, when Tito built his shack on the outskirts of Austin, and dogs just started showing up. One day he looked outside, he saw paw prints, and he was like, I don't think Dog Joe did this. It must have been another dog. So he put out food and water, and before you know it, a bunch of strays showed up. And since day one, we have now helped rescue over 130 dogs from our distillery in Austin, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah, we partnered with a great group called Emancipet. They're in Austin. They have a mobile vet that drives around, kind of like the Bloodmobile you see driving around.
Yeah.
So they can go to different markets that people need help with spays, neuters, shots, etc. And we help them out. It's a wonderful cause. And a lady named Beth Belanti down in Austin on our team created it. And it wasn't just something that a marketing group came up with for us. It was literally real life scenarios that that's how we came up with our Vodka for Dog People program.
Yeah, and that probably caught the timeline really well, right? Because you also look, the popularity of pets is just skyrocketing.
Oh, everyone loves dogs.
I heard a whole thing about just the insurance for pets alone, and like, so you caught the right time. But again, like you said, you're not following the lead. You're not having a marketing agency come up with it. You guys were leading the charge of this, which is always where the most organic marketing comes out. So I have to imagine that that's another affinity you capitalized on, right? People hear about this now. Now all of a sudden, dog lovers are like, well, this is the only thing I'm going to drink.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now we've expanded. We've helped out with dog transport across the country when you need to go to a certain vet. We've helped out with stray maternity wards, adoption. We throw adoption parties on outside of bars. We'll have our Tito set up there with our Vodka for Dog People stand, and then we'll have a local shelter come out with dogs and just do impromptu dog adoption events.
That's awesome.
And they go really, really well. And it's a lot of fun when you're outside and it's 80 degrees, you got a cocktail in your hand, and all of a sudden you're adopting a puppy.
That is a great
Yes.
segue. One of the things that's changed over the past 10, 15 years is just the difference of what a bar is seen as, right? I mean, if you look 25 years ago, you're like dark, smoky, and now all of a sudden they're bringing kids and dogs to every distillery and every brewery, and bars are built with picnic tables and areas so you can bring your kids.
Yeah.
So, and I do it all the time. I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, you still got to drive home, you still got to keep control, but that's again another timeline. This has changed to where you're not targeting maybe those same, they used to always say, 5% of the audience drink 95% of the booze? I think that's changed a lot, and it has opened up to more of a social day drinking activity.
I wonder how many dogs are named Tito now.
Oh, it's funny. So we actually, on our website, you can look up dogs named Tito. We do a special ode to them on our website. We'll put their picture up on our Vodka for Dog People webpage. There are quite a few dogs named Tito.
That's cool.
I can imagine.
That's organic marketing, man. I mean, again, it kind of developed into what it is, and that's something that's really hard to fake. And I think that's what we're talking about a lot here. A lot of these topics are authentic, and when you try to duplicate them, that's where people lose out, because you can't fake these things, which is probably also why this has been such a successful brand. So talk a little bit about seltzer. So I know we're catching the end trend of it, thank God, because it was never my thing. They're like, but it's healthy. I'm like, there's more calories and it's worse for you than Miller Lite. I don't know what's healthy about that. But anyway, so talk about it. Talk about how, because at its core, really, you're just talking about a neutral, light tasting beverage that kind of has a lot of the qualities of the vodka and soda we're talking about. How did you market against it? Is it something that you ever thought about jumping in the trend? And where do you see that industry going versus you guys?
Oh, so this is a fun one. So our VP of marketing, his name's Taylor Berry. He came up with this idea of having empty Tito's cans that look like seltzer cans, but they're just empty. And we sold them for $20 a piece on our website. We sold out of them in 48 hours, right? We donate all the money from our web store to charity, which is wonderful. But we sold out of these things in 48 hours. And his idea was, we don't really succumb to trends that everybody else is jumping on the bandwagon of. We do one thing, we do it right, so that's what we're going to stick with. So we came out with this campaign of Tito's in a can. You can make you can use your own fresh ingredients to make a drink the way that you want to. Right. And it's not something that you're going to go find in stores. But it was a fun campaign also, because you have no idea how many phone calls that I got. Oh my gosh, Tito's is making a seltzer. No, guys, you don't understand. It's just an empty can.
That is a PR stunt at its finest. And again, this is the purest form of marketing. And again, let's call this what it is. Like, anyone who's listening right now, you can't fake this stuff. You can't go out and be like, well, let's try that. It's just never going to work. If this stuff does not go organically, it's never going to work. And
you have to have some confidence. You have to have, be a little bit willing to be tongue in cheek and say, we're different and we're going to stay different.
And you have to know who you're going after also, right? Like, at its core, a purist of vodka is like, I'm not drinking seltzer. It's not happening. And if I am, it doesn't have enough booze, so I'm going to top it off with some vodka before I go out the door.
You see a lot of that too. So you see a lot of these seltzers that we call it loading it up. And you take a sip of it, and then maybe you pour some Tito's on top.
Maybe a floater.
Yeah, a little floater
in there. Yeah, that's awesome, dude. What about, so, we just
came off dry January.
We just off dry January.
Did that, and
we're not just, but yes, it's still top of mind for somebody who didn't drink, because once you get back on the bandwagon, you forget dry January real fast. But, so dry January, it's a trend, right? It grows every year. So I remember seeing an ad or hearing about a clever way you guys confronted that. So talk about dry January a little bit.
Oh, so dry January was fun for us. It is a growing trend that you see across the United States. Everybody takes January off from drinking, right? As a way of health and wellness. So we looked at it and we said, how can we still, as a vodka brand, stay top of mind? So instead of dry January, we thought, what about DIY January, right? And who better to help us do this than Martha Stewart? So we're not a brand with celebrity spokespeople, but this was just, right up Martha Stewart's alley. It was perfect.
That and Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
Oh, and Snoop Dogg. We can talk about that.
Maybe she got Snoop with a bottle of
Snoop,
Tito's tattooed on her body.
Oh, it was funny because, he went and on his social channels, he reposted everything that Martha was doing with our vodka bottle. I mean, she had used the bottle as a meat cleaver. We made different tops that screwed onto the top of the bottle, like a spray top to spritz some plants. And
recycling at its finest, right? You're in that movement right now, man.
But all these tops that we created that screwed onto the bottle, different attachments, those sold out in under 8 hours on our web store. Okay, like this was a joke that we came up with, and we sold out all of those. Oh, it was fantastic, and it got shared on social media channels more than anything that I've ever seen. It was incredible the reach that this ad had.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're talking about upcycling, they call it. It's not recycling, it's upcycling, because you're taking a product and means something else. So you're checking off a box of the current generation. You're a product that's going to become a social media phenomenon, which is more powerful than marketing when you do it right. And you're talking somebody who pretty much was in our generation was in jail, that all of a sudden has reinvented herself as a hip-hop loving, weed loving, alcohol redoer. I mean, it's an unbelievable story, and I think you're right, it fits the brand, and I don't think anyone thought of her as a spokesperson at that point. It was more like a partnership in that she is an authentic person. I mean, again, like you look at her and Snoop, you're like, you guys really, really love each other. This is a little weird. But
there's a little irreverence going on there. But
it was just fun. We looked at it and we thought, shoot, no other brand could be able to pull this off. Basically telling everyone not to drink your product for an entire month. But we did it, and it was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some other markets you've hit that maybe are, I don't know if they're more mainstream, but you've done a lot with the PGA Tour and the golf community. And trust me, I know, boy, some of my guys started getting deep into the transfusions on the golf course.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was big starting, definitely last summer it was. They probably started a couple years ago, but last year it seemed like every time a couple of us were out there playing, it was
and that's
drink
the point.
The transfusion halfway through the round.
That's a great point, because I can't tell if it's because that's the way I play golf, where if I don't have a drink in my hand, I feel just icky. I feel weird. But I always thought it was an underutilized place that people didn't spend enough resources on going after golfers, because most of the people that I play with are not going for their best score every time.
Yeah.
They're going because they get away for 4.5 hours and they get to go completely escape in the woods. And what better to do that than a couple of cocktails?
Oh, yeah. So we announced our PGA partnership. We have a multi-year agreement with them last year. And instead of doing just a standard press release like most everybody else does, we thought, what could be something fun to announce our partnership with PGA? So we invited a few PGA golfers down to Butler Pitch and Putt in Austin, Texas. Okay. Little pitch and putt course, executive course that people like to call it. And it was fun.
Not maintained the same way the courses they play.
The same way as a couple here in Georgia, right? Especially out in Augusta. But we brought them out down to Austin, Texas, put Tito's cocktails in their hand, and had them play around a golf. And they played around called Wolf, I think was the game.
Yep.
Where you hit a shot. If it's really good, then you can go alone versus the other golfers. And they all played for a purse that Tito's put up for their respective charities.
Cool.
So you had a bunch of professional golfers out there that your average Joe, the course that your average Joe usually is playing, you had these guys out there tearing it up. Yeah. Literally. You should watch the video. They were tearing it up.
That's great. And again, that's that PR stunt, man. That's not something you can fake. That is something they probably were drinking. They probably had a lot of fun. And it probably became just in itself this content that you couldn't capture if you tried to videotape it.
Oh, no. Of course, you saw these guys as real people because they couldn't wear shorts, on tour. Back at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And so now they're out there doing what I do. I can't hit it like them, but I can have fun like them.
I wonder if they play golf the same way I do, where 1 to 6 drinks, I'm amazing. At 4 to 6, I become the best golfer in the world. Once I go over 6, it all goes downhill. So if they could find that way to keeping that 4 to 6 drinks in your blood at any time, that's golfing. I wonder if it's the same for them.
I don't know. I think you should call John Daly about that one.
Oh, no. John Daly lives at 10 to 12. That's his range. He doubles my range to go for it. Yeah, and those are a lot of national programs. So let's bring this to Atlanta where the audience is. Let's talk about some things happening here. This is an interesting, I think the state, since as Tito's has grown, and Austin is one of those cities that has grown immensely in popularity, but so is Atlanta. And I every single spirit brand that we interact with, and on the marketing side, we interact with a lot of them, this is a target market. This is one of the bigger target markets in the country with room to grow. I know Corona, this is their number 2 market in America, which is crazy to think about.
Wow.
So talk about a little bit what you're doing locally, what you've seen here, how quick we've been to adopt the trend. Does the Texas help in Georgia? Talk a little bit about let's localize this.
Oh, goodness. We do really well in the state of Georgia, especially up here in Atlanta. You mentioned down in Savannah a little bit on River Street. You can find Tito's Handmade Vodka in every bar down there. We do really well. But again, that's a tourist city. But up here in Atlanta, we do a lot of charity work, which is wonderful. That's one thing that I mentioned earlier. Anybody that needs help, that's a legitimate 501c3, can reach out to our brand. And Tito's philosophy on it is say yes. He wants to help anyone and everyone. So we've gotten to do a lot of wonderful charitable partnerships and events throughout Georgia. We've got a few coming up. There's one up in Alpharetta called Shamrockin'.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been up there. So Shamrockin' for Your Cure, a wonderful event that takes place at the amphitheater up there. And
it's for cystic fibrosis. It's started by a good friend of mine, and it's just a fantastic event. So
we've helped them out for a few years. It's wonderful to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you have every Vodka for Dog People event that we've got going on, but we've also done some really fun things that actually go along with this marketing podcast. We partnered with Big Boy and rebranded his Stankonia Studios.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a big feather in my cap that I liked. So he came out with a new record a few years ago called Boomiverse. And as I was listening to it, it had 2 different tracks on it that mentioned Tito's, right? Which is weird.
Yeah. Okay.
Because a few years ago, you didn't find us on the radio in rap songs especially. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I want to do something fun for him. So I made a gift basket with some Tito's bottles, and one of the songs is called Chocolate on his tracks. And I put some chocolate in the gift basket, got with his representative, Miss Lachey, and said, hey, can you please give him this gift basket? She said, oh, well, actually, he wants to meet you. Have you ever been over to Stankonia before? No. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I'm, a white guy from Columbus, 175 pounds soaking wet. Like, Stankonia is not somewhere that I have been before, right? So I go over there, check out the recording studio, and all of a sudden I think, wow, this would be really cool if we rebranded this back bar area, right? Another brand had set up some stuff there years prior, and I talked to my marketing team. They said, this sounds wonderful. So we flew a team in from California, and we made the inside of Stankonia Studios a Tito's lounge. So I'm talking copper bar top, bottles on the back bar. We painted the whole place. We had a special Tito's print that we put on the walls. It looks incredible in there. And they do a fun thing called New Music Mondays each Monday, where they have different DJs from around the city come out. And it was a different audience that was able to come in and see our brand that weren't really familiar with it. It worked out really well for us because this was a year before the Super Bowl was held here in Atlanta. And then we used that venue to host a Super Bowl party with Big Boy.
Cool.
And I'm talking A-list celebrities, football players, everybody that was in town came out.
Gronk probably. And
no Gronk, but we had some really cool players out there. And it was a lot of fun because we threw the party together in about 6 days. And I still have people tell me that was one of the coolest Super Bowl parties that we attended when we were in Atlanta. But it was nice to have your own venue that was Tito's branded.
And I think the smart thing you did there was you went after, you used a natural influencer channel.
Yeah.
To create a relationship with an audience who you otherwise would not be going after.
Correct.
Right? In a market that is very, very heavily African American and the culture surrounding it. And you found the godfather of Atlanta rap, one of the two between him and Andre, and were able to infiltrate that culture by simply saying a gift basket. Let's call it what it is. I mean, one, the gumption, but the smarts for you to be able to start the relationship that way. But that is, again, when you talk about old school marketing and how you did it, that level of infiltration is something you cannot imitate. You just took a shot. The things worked in your favor, and you were prepared to bounce with the luck that you were handed.
Yeah. But I mean, they really liked the brand. So, I mean, it was genuine.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it was really, really cool, and it worked out for us.
Yeah,
cool.
That's awesome.
Well, some other stories on those same lines. You've done a little bit of the barbershop talk program. You want to kind of get into that? Yeah.
Oh, this was good. So Artie De Los Santos is a coworker of mine. He now helps manage the multicultural market for Georgia and South Carolina, and he moved down from New York right after COVID. This was his brainchild. He explained to me that in his world, the barber shop is used for connecting with people, mentorship, etc. And he said, well, how can we get people that maybe go in on a Monday that might be an attorney, for example, to talk to the college student that wants to go to law school that may be there on a Thursday, right? The bartender is your guy that can connect them. So let's throw an event for networking, wrap a Tito's bow around it, see if we can tie in a little bit of charity, and throw it at a barbershop here in Atlanta. So we got to thinking, who do we know that has some barbershops? Well, through my connection with Big Boy, I was able to meet an Atlanta legend, Killer Mike. And we sat down at his friend's house. Artie and I talked to him. We said, hey, here's our idea. What if we bring everybody together at your barbershops, we partner with some local Atlanta charities, and we have this networking event? And Killer Mike, and he'll tell you straight up, he goes, my passion is helping young black men in Atlanta.
Yes.
And he will tell you that on, every television show he's on.
But it comes through.
But it comes
people
through.
have passion.
Yeah.
If you watch his interviews,
Genuine.
what he says, I mean, he gets very animated at the lack of progress in which he's seen and does a lot of things to give back. So that is not a talking point. That is one. But he's also, and I've met him a couple of times, he's very approachable.
Yes.
And he is very much believes that this, and I remember I was joking with him. He was walking in here and they had the half pipe or the ramp set up for snowboarding.
Okay.
And I go, Mike, why are you setting up a barbershop at the whitest sport in the history of mankind? And he goes, black barbershops are for everyone, bro. And he kind of walked away. Yeah. And it was such a natural interaction. But the point is that the stigma is the especially in New York, in Harlem, it was the black barbershop. It was the guys getting their hair cut, and then they were mentors, and they were kids, and they had to escape the hood. But he's very much like, no, that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be for everybody.
Correct.
So while his goal is to bring black youth out of out of these things and out of poverty, he is very diverse in who he goes after, targets. And man, I mean, if you look at Run the Jewels, that is one of the most diverse audience of listeners on earth.
Correct.
And Trip, if you have not been to a Run the Jewels show where the subwoofer is 38 feet tall and blasts your face off, you're missing out.
Oh, yeah, it was good. So after talking with Killer Mike, we partnered on two charities. The Georgia Building Trade Academy and Next Level Boys Academy. We went down to his barbershop and we threw a party. We had, maybe 100, 150 people come out. We raised a bunch of money for these great organizations. And it's something that we've now done twice. So hopefully we've got the third event coming up next year.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And all these stories, there have been a lot of imitators that have come in and have stolen the Texas vodka. Talk about, in the last 2 minutes or so of this segment, talk about the plans. Do they bother you? Are they something that you guys just ignore? Talk about the competitors, the fakers, and how the posers, if you will, and how you handle those guys.
Oh, goodness. Once you're the number one brand, everybody wants to come after you, right? We've seen a lot of vodkas pop up in Austin, Texas.
If you take a shot at the king, you better not miss. Stealing from Mr. Benningham on the Braves Radio Network.
But everybody, we're genuine. We've, since day one, 25 years ago, Tito said, vodka is just my widget that I can use to be a philanthropist and help people. And he lets all of his salespeople in every state in the market go out, pick out your different 501c3 charities, and just be genuine and help people.
Yeah.
And we make one product really, really well, right?
You know who you are.
Yeah.
You know what you're not.
That's it. We make a filet mignon at a pot roast price, and we're going to stick to vodka-flavored vodka right there in Austin, Texas.
That localization has to help too, because if you can market to your state with authentic things to your state, then you feel more local, and it feels like it might not just be Texas. Because, you know, I know New Yorkers and Texans don't like each other. They drink the crap out of Tito's in New York. So someone's doing something right.
Yeah, no, and I think that's it's just a great lesson of, you know, everyone wants to follow, I call them fads. You know, trends are one thing, fads are another, and I think that you know, Tito's has followed their strategy and what the authentic message is. So when we come back from the break, though, we do want to talk a little bit about not fads, but maybe some trends, some things that you see that are happening now that we're in a post-COVID world, and how might that play out with Tito's as well. So you're listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. We'll be right back.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Today we're with Mr. Theo Hall talking about Tito's Handmade Vodka and the spirits industry as a whole. If you do enjoy this content, please like, subscribe. We put lots of content out there. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. Send us a note. Tell us what you want to hear talk about. Tell us if you want to be on the show. We do this for a reason, and honestly, we love having conversations like this. There are some brands that have just figured it out right, and I'm not saying you can imitate them, but there's always benefit to learning from them. So on that note, Theo, let's talk about some trends. Take yourself out of the Tito shoes and let's go into market-wide and some industry trends. You know, I've heard a lot about the millennials and younger generations staying off booze a little bit. I know that the legalization of marijuana across the country has changed how people consume. What trends are you seeing in the industry? What are you on the lookout for? And what do you see the next couple of years looking like?
One thing that I'm seeing in some of my national accounts are non-alcoholic cocktails on the menu.
Okay.
Right?
And when it makes it to national, because I've seen them locally, but when it makes it to national and the demand is on that level, if freaking Applebee's is doing it, you know that this is going to have some adoption.
Right.
Yeah. You know, it helps me out because I can do my little just add Tito's tag at the bottom of that. So it's a way for me to put vodka in there. But there are a lot of people that don't want to drink when they go out with their family, right? So if you're out with your kids and you still want a fun, fruity cocktail with no booze, there's a lot of non-alc cocktails that are making their way onto menus. And I think it's a wonderful trend. It's still a great way to have some mixology involved for the bartender, right? And there's some really good cocktails that people are coming up with, too.
Right.
I've gotten to try them all, and they're really, really good.
Well,
Restaurants love them.
I'm imagine that at times, too, some of them may be, okay, well, here's something the kid can drink to be like mom or dad, but it's not an alcoholic, versus the days when we were coming up in, you know, Shirley Temple.
Shirley
please.
Temple.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about.
Yes.
I thought you were going to talk about candy cigarettes.
Yeah, no.
Yep.
Yeah, it does too,
but I also think the restaurants love them because that's where your margins are, right? One of the
Correct.
biggest things during COVID was when you do takeout, you don't have your margins on booze. So now all of a sudden, if you're not even using the booze and you're using these ingredients to make these mocktails, if you will, there's margins there like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just a Diet Coke that they're ordering. They can get a little bit of extra money out of it. You know, they're not charging the same price as a full cocktail.
Sure.
But yeah, you know, if a Diet Coke, we'll call it $3, maybe they can charge $5 for one of these mixology non-alc cocktails.
Yeah, that's
Well,
great.
so what other things that you're seeing out there? So maybe more on the, you know, I think you talked about it before. There was the brown liquor kind of, you know, wave. Now, where are you seeing things today, and maybe even, you know, intermixing? You know, with obviously Tito's is staying true to its core, but what are you seeing out there in the spirits world?
Yeah. Like I said, in the off-premise, seltzers are popular, but you're seeing a lot of tequila. So tequila is the hot brand that's on right now. After, you know, Randy Gerber and George Clooney sold Casamigos for $1 billion, that made waves in the industry. And you're going to see a lot of celebrities create their own tequila companies. The Rock has his own tequila. The guys from Breaking Bad have their own tequila. Dos Hombres, I think is what it's called. But you're going to see a whole lot more tequila brands popping up A lot of them do a really good job, too. There's some pretty tasty tequilas out there.
But you got to be well-funded for tequila. One, to source the product, the real blue agave product from Mexico. Yeah. One, I heard the supply chains were all broken. They're not making enough agave. So it's not something like a vodka that is pretty easily to distill. There's a lot of variables involved in Tito, in making tequila. So you have to be well-funded to start a tequila company.
Well, and one of the things, too, maybe you can talk a little bit about packaging and bottling, because I think, when you talk about tequila, one of the things I noticed, a lot of times it comes down to packaging, and people really put, whether it's the shape of the bottle, uniqueness, a lot of thought into that.
I would say bourbon too, just some capacity. The more expensive the bottle is, the more artwork that they put into the...
But when you look at vodka in general and you look at Tito's, it tends to be more consistent. But the Tito stories with the copper, top and a few others, how do you think about that, and what do you see?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'll talk about Tito's first on this one, but I've got some pretty good thoughts on it. So when Tito started, he wanted to just use a cheap recycled glass bottle, as cheap as it could come, right? So when you look at our bottle, there's no frills. It's not frosted. It's just the same recycled bottle that it started in day one. Other brands try to make their bottle look fancy, but then that leads the price to go up, right? And we want to be a fair price for everybody. So that's what you see with the Tito's Handmade vodka bottle. Now, for your point with tequila brands, some of those bottles are incredible. I've seen some shaped like skulls, different. I've seen a race car bottle of a tequila before. Some of those are kind of neat. But to your point, you see really expensive tequilas coming in some really ornate bottles. And I think, like you said, that's all about the marketing behind it.
It's about the marketing, because I think a lot of people don't understand the different gradients of tequila. And so you're not really sure what you're going to get inside of it. So you create the view on the outside, which I think the beauty, too, is I didn't realize it was the original bottle, but it's clear, it's pure. What you see is what you get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you buy tequila, an expensive bottle of tequila, it's usually tied to an occasion, right? But that's not what you drink regularly, right? You have Tito's, that's what it goes through, like every 2 weekends you're buying a new bottle of it, and it is and the point isn't that it's the rail beverage, but the point is that when you are drinking something like that and you're looking at the bottle all the time, is the bottle really as important as opposed to when you rip out that bottle of tequila for a graduation or something like that, and you're having that very special moment? Because I promise you, the one thing I know to be true, the nicer the bottle is, the less thought that was put on the product itself that goes into it. Because when you have good product, you don't need fancy bottles. I mean, it's just at its core. You look. Sometimes when you look at some of the very rare bourbons, when you're charging $300-400 per, you can understand it a little bit. But at its core, when you are drinking something that is on your liquor shelf or on your bar all the time, how often are you really staring at that bottle and going, wow, as I grab this drink on a Friday after a hard week of work, that tapestry work is just changing my life. It doesn't happen that often. So I appreciate the value proposition. I think it's also another barrier to entry, right? If you want to come in, fight the battle, you got to charge more. And if you charge more for a worse product, you're never going to win. So I think it's smart strategy, but I also think it fits the authenticity of the brand. Mm-hmm. What else you got? What else are we seeing as far as the next couple of years? I think that bars and restaurants are continuing to grow. I think you're going to see some consolidation and some of them close and that footprint close a little. My honest opinion is that there's too many restaurants anyway and they're too expensive. But what do you see there? Do you see bars continuing to grow? Do you see kind of this, this underground urban layer speakeasy? What do you see there in trend-wise?
Oh, gosh, especially here in Georgia. I know there are hundreds of bars slated to open this year. It's kind of cyclical, right? As one closes, somebody else comes in and tries a new concept. So there's always some closing, always some opening, right? I think with everybody, like I mentioned previously, people were stuck at home for a year. Our numbers that I can tell you right now are back to pre-COVID levels. So people are back out in restaurants and bars drinking. So I see a lot more places opening, especially as Atlanta is growing. And I don't think there's any downside to the restaurant industry right now. I only see positive growth for the next 5 years.
And is that in Atlanta or national? And one of the things, people are moving here in droves. Right. Atlanta, and if you look at it, ironically,
just demographics.
To this day, I've been in Atlanta for 8 years. There are sometimes I eat meals, and it is less expensive than when I was eating in D.C. 8 years ago. Yeah. Because those market fluctuations, those prices are very real things. Yeah. So do you see it as an Atlanta thing, or do you think nationwide that you're going to see this boom of just restaurants and bars opening?
No, I think it's a nationwide thing. I think people are happy to get back out there And I definitely see this as a nationwide trend for restaurants to be opening back up.
And that entertainment, right? That's what you're going out
Yes.
for.
Yeah.
The amount of restaurants opening that have a DJ spinning. I mean, it's crazy. I thought that had gone away and it's coming back. Like you had to think like you're on the coast of Ibiza when you're sitting there at a restaurant.
You're competing for time, and so I mean that's really what
with a
it's
lot
about.
of other people these days.
Yeah.
That entertainment venues, the Top Golfs of the world, the Fairway Socials.
Yeah.
Those will boom because those are just money makers.
Right, and I think that's an area where Tito's has done a nice job, and I think you'll continue to do well. And Theo, we really appreciate you joining us today and giving us a little bit of the backstory about Tito's. So as we move on, we'll do some more here later this season. So with that, you've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. We'll be back next week.
A lifetime of hard work, children laughing in the kitchen, family photos on a restaurant wall, a legacy that lives on. It all comes from the power of a conversation, like the one Tommy Hall had with First Horizon Bank about taking over his father's Charleston-based restaurant business. Now the table is set for a whole new generation. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Tommy. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.